Hi guys, it's Ariana. Welcome back to my channel. So for tonight's video, we're going to be reading some more scary stories. So I do have a couple stories from Reddit that I'm going to be reading, and then I do have some Instagram DMs to go through and my email that I still have to go through. I've just been very busy lately. As you guys heard in my last video, if you haven't already watched that video, I'll link it up in the eye for you guys. But I recently moved, so this is a new setup. This is why it probably sounds a little bit different and why it looks a little bit different, because I moved. So please bear with me while I go through this transition and try to get my studio set up again. But I really want to get back into filming very regularly, so let's just jump on into these spooky stories. So as per usual, I have my wicked candle in here making my whole studio smell like caramel apple. Let's jump into the first one. So this is from the True Scary Stories section. It is from the Reddit author Degarella, and it's titled, I Used to Live in a Haunted House. Recently, I have been reminiscing on my paranormal experiences, and I thought to share one of them in the spirit of spooky season. I'm pretty sure the last house I lived in was haunted, and here's why. Up until last year, I was living in a shared house with my longtime friend. We've known each other since high school, and because of a few unfortunate events, we ended up living together in a couple of places. The house we lived in at the time was getting too small for us, and that's how we found our new place, that I solemnly believe, till this day, was haunted. At the beginning of summer 2020, we both agreed it was time to search for a new place, somewhere that was more convenient and spacious, and when the time was right, I found a Facebook ad for a beautiful grade 2 listed building right in the middle of town center. The place was super spacious, had more room than we could have asked for, tall ceilings and an old sash windows with beautiful views of the town center. I loved everything old and antique, so instantly I fell in love with it. When we first went to view it, it was full of light, warmth, and felt super inviting. We made our decision pretty fast, and after a couple of days of back and forth with the landlords, we completed necessary paperwork and started packing, and a month later, we were moving. On the day of our move, we noticed one big difference. The place was very dark and cold, and nothing like it felt the first time we saw it. We were still in the middle of summer, but inside, it was around 6 degrees Celsius, which was baffling. I visited many old buildings in my time, but I've never felt cold radiating off the walls like that. Okay, my furnace just kicked in, so if you guys hear that, I'm sorry, there's really nothing I can do about that. My furnace is literally in the basement, and that's where I currently am. So if you guys hear that and my mic is picking it up, I apologize. I will try to figure out a way to minimize the sound that my mic picks up, but I don't know if I can. There was also a very thick wall between mine and my friend's bedroom, which no matter how hard we knocked on, we couldn't hear each other. It was the end of June, and we both had 2 electric heaters going for most of the day to no avail. The heat just wouldn't stick. Our first night was cold and pretty much sleepless, because every time I felt myself drifting, a noise would wake me up, and I couldn't settle back down. It wasn't anything in particular, more like ordinary house creaking noises that we were used to, but the frequency of them was off. It was as if the house wouldn't let me fall asleep. I didn't question it as much as I should have, because I was naturally anxious for my first night in a new place. So I didn't expect much sleep anyway. There was an old saying in my family that the first dream you have in a new house is very important, as it will tell you if the place is a good fit for you and if you will be having good fortune living there. Once I finally managed to get some sleep, I basically fell into what felt like a mini coma. I remember being chased through the house by a tall, dark shadow figure, and it definitely wasn't a good sign. Throughout the first week, we finally managed to get used to the noises and had a full night of sleep. I didn't remember having any dreams after that. It just kind of felt blank, as if I hadn't dreamt at all. But sooner rather than later, things began happening. There was always issues with construction of the building, strange, pungent smells, and leaks would appear out of nowhere, even when we were going through a heat wave, which in the part of the UK we lived in, it would get pretty dry. We'd get frequent power cuts with no other buildings being affected but ours. It was common knowledge among our family and friends that there was always something going on with our building, and it felt like the house just didn't want to be lived in. Contractors would come out to fix the constant leaking roof, but a couple of days later, it would come back stronger, even though it hadn't been raining. The landlords were tired and baffled by constant small disasters that we would call them about. As I'm writing this, they sold the building about 3 months ago. I'm guessing things haven't changed much, and they simply had had enough. I remember one particular night when it felt like things reached a completely new level, and it wasn't just about small, confusing repairs. It was about to get very paranormal and personal. I just came back home from work and was unpacking some groceries I bought on my way back. The kitchen was never my favorite place to be in the building. It always felt uneasy being there alone, especially when I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Our toilet and shower rooms were separate and had a small vestibule with some utilities and storage. The fridge stood right next to one of them, which led to our shower, so I could always see into it with the corner of my eye. I nearly finished putting things away in the fridge when I caught a glimpse of something and instantly froze. For a moment, I thought I saw a dark, tall figure just standing there, but when I looked again, it was gone. It looked exactly like the shadow figure in my dream, the only dream I've ever had since we moved here. An overwhelmingly sense of dread crawled up my spine, and I darted out of there as fast as I could. The place looked empty, but I could feel 1,000 eyes watching me from every direction. My love for the paranormal and occult has taught me that this particular feeling is probably the worst sign of an evil entity being present. Apparitions aren't as dangerous, even though they might seem so at first, but a feeling of being watched, as if something's hovering above you with their claws stretched out just waiting to pull you in, is a very, very bad feeling. And most likely isn't your grandma visiting from the afterlife. A few days later, I told my friend about what had happened, and she said she experienced something similar while taking a shower a couple of nights back. It's as if the same tall, dark shadow hovered in the corner of the shower room, just below the attic flap. She hated that flap since we moved in and always mentioned that it felt off, like something was up there and could come out at any time. For the next few weeks, we would watch the house closely and tell each other if we'd find anything suspicious. We didn't see the figure again, but an overwhelmingly sense of dread and fear had started to spread across the whole house, making us question what the hell was going on. Were we really dealing with something supernatural? The building was very old, probably at least 70 to 100 years old, and it was possible that it would hold a lot of energy from its previous owners. So many different stories and scenarios have played out in these walls. Not all of them could be good. Most of them probably weren't. I tried to research about the history of it, but didn't have much luck, except for finding that the building was used as a moot hall, which was a meeting hall for the town's residents back in the early days. Things didn't look good. The building would pull tricks on us more often and at night. I watched my ceiling nearly split in half as the plaster cracked all the way across my bedroom. Apparently, it wasn't anything dangerous, but it certainly didn't feel like it at the time when I laid my head and watched the whole thing happen. Me and my friend both began entertaining the thought of moving somewhere else, even though the original plan was to stay here for a few years. The atmosphere was becoming unbearable, and so we had to make a choice, or rather, it was made for us during our last power cut. That was our breaking point. It was around midnight when the lights went off and we met at the landing with our tiny emergency flashlights we always used to check the fuse box. Most often than not, the fuses were fine, but we always checked anyway because the thought of having to sit in the dark, not knowing what's next, was way too disturbing, especially at this time. We went down 2 flights of stairs to get to the awkwardly fitted fuse box right below our tall ceiling and began investigating when my friend's shoulder got pulled back, as if someone was trying to grab her. We both screamed and ran back to our bedrooms, where we hoped and waited for the power to come back. It was probably the longest 2.5 hours of my life. We didn't wait long before applying for a new house, but every new place we found just wouldn't happen. There was always a different reason, like the paperwork issues or other applicants got it ahead of us. I eventually moved back in with my parents to save up for my own place, because the chances of us getting anything looked more bleak with each week, and we didn't want to stay in the house any longer. And that's how I left the house. Sometimes when I visit town center, I walk by the building and feel the same sense of dread from before, as if something or someone is staring down at me, wanting to reach out and pull me back in to finish what it started. And time still, I get the same dream I had the first night we moved there, but I always manage to get away. I wonder what the new residents have to deal with, and if they're okay. And that's how they ended the story. That is fucking terrifying. I would not stay in that house. Like you guys know though, I'm a giant fucking chicken. I would not stay there. No fucking way. That is absolutely terrifying, and I'm so glad you guys moved. And it's kind of really creepy that you continue to have that dream even though you're not in that house anymore. I wonder if something attached to you. I fucking hope not. I hate that so much. So thank you so much for allowing me to read your story. I, again, apologize if you guys can hear my furnace in any of my videos going forward. It was being pretty loud. It was just heating up my house because I'm in Canada and we are literally in the middle of a snowstorm, so what can you do? But I am going to jump on to the next video, and I hope the next story doesn't have the furnace noise. So the next one that I want to read is from the no sleep section, and it's from the Reddit author turbulent-sign-5464, and it's titled, I Hear Voices in the Woods. I don't like people much, never have. As a young boy, I left my parents' home to become a park ranger in the Great Smoky Mountains because I thought it meant I could be in nature all day. I was a glorified janitor and a tour guide for most of the tenure there. Nothing makes me angrier than some people asking me, do you know where the closest gas station is? I do, but I could give less of a shit whether you find it. Or, do you know any great stories? No, I don't. I lasted about 2 months before I was fed up with it and left to find work that fit me better. I tried to be a fisherman since I love to fish, but I hated it after 5 months. Nothing appeased my young mind, so I up and left society. With whatever money I had left, I bought as many tools as possible and went out into the woods of the Smoky Mountains. After some time, I found a beautiful clearing in the woods, flat, covered by trees, and most importantly, miles from any town. It took me about a month to build myself a little cabin straight out of the little house on the prairie and plant some food so I could survive. I've been out here for God knows how long, maybe a decade, but every day is the same, just how I like it. I wake up to the sun shining into my room, covering the walls with warm light. I walk out into the porch and sit there and think for most of the morning. Once I feel as though I'm ready for the day, I get up and go hunt or fish down the hill. If I catch something, I'll come back and clean it. If I catch an animal, I'll skin them and dry the hides for selling at the flea market 10 miles away. I know I said I hate people, but sometimes there's something I just can't build on my own. I'll eat dinner by myself, then roll into bed and start the next day. That's how it's been, and that's how I like it. But for the past couple of weeks, I can swear I hear someone talking to me from the surrounding woods. I assume it's just the wind, or maybe I'm finally going crazy after all these years. Most of the time, I can barely make out the words. I know something is being said, but I'll only catch a few syllables here and there. It doesn't scare me one bit, but I just find it strange. Finally, last week, about 5 days ago, I heard my first full sentence. The woods are no place for a man like you. It startled me, that's for sure. It seemed to be coming from outside the house, near my front porch. I flung my wooden door open, almost knocking it off its hinges, and pointed into the dark with my old Remington. "You fuckers don't know who you're messing with," I shouted. My voice traveled through the trees, but nothing responded. Angry that someone may be on my property, I sat in the living room, gun across my lap, for the whole night. I awoke in the morning, startled by a loud noise at my feet. I had dropped the Remington onto the floor. My heart beat fast, but quickly subsided to its usual lubbed up. The day was normal yet again. I decided I needed some more ammo, so I went into town and sold some skins to the locals and made my way back to the cabin. Night rolled in, and I sat on my porch until the sun had long left my side of the mountain. It had started to get pretty chilly, so I made my way into the house and threw some logs onto the wood fire stove and sat in my lounger. I tried my best to stay awake, but my head kept bobbing like I was listening to some old rock and roll as a young kid. I was seconds away from slumber when I heard something close to my ear. "That gun isn't gonna save you from us." My eyes sprung open, and I shot out of my seat. Panting, I looked around the room and saw nothing, heard nothing. I was angry, and I stomped my foot like a little kid and yelled, "If I see you, I've got a bullet loaded with your name on it." I stormed off to my room and locked my door. I could say I wasn't frightened, but does someone who isn't scared clutch a rifle to their chest and stay up all night? I couldn't tell you. By this time, I had been pretty sleep deprived and decided to stay in my cabin all day. The voices started to appear in the early evening before the sun went down. They increased in their frequency and volume. "This land is not meant for you. It's ours, and we will rip it from your hands. We can see you. Only a matter of time before your skin and bones become dirt." At this point, I couldn't eat, drink, or sleep. I moved my chair to face directly towards the door and sat there. The night passed into day, and the voices taunted me. I never wavered. I never moved. Day rolled into night again, and I sat with my bladder full and my colon ready to explode. But I wasn't fucking moving. The voices became so loud that I tried to cover my ears. It didn't help. They seemed to be coming from inside my head. All of a sudden, they stopped around 10. All was quiet, except for the light crinkling of leaves outside my cabin. Each crinkle came closer and closer by the second, until the crinkling stopped and I could hear feet thudding on my wooden porch. I readied my rifle at the door and waited. The footsteps stopped at my front door. 2 knocks ran through the wooden door and through my ears. I pulled the trigger and a bullet traveled straight through the door. A heavy thud hit my deck, and I ran to the door and swung it open. On the ground lay a short young man in a park ranger uniform. In his hand was a letter. I picked it up and brought it to my face to read it better. It was a notice of wildfires increasing in the area and to let me know if I see any. I crumpled it on the deck and I wailed. The voices never returned. And that's how they ended the story. So that's so fucking creepy. And obviously that is a no sleep story, so that is likely a fictional story. And hope nobody died. If the author wants to comment down below and let us know that it was a fictional story, that would be great, because that's fucking terrifying and so tragic if that actually happened. And oh my God, that is terrifying. The voices, is awful. Just having something like whisper to you in the forest is terrifying. Oh my God, I hate that so much. So thank you so much for allowing me to read your story. Okay, I was gonna read some more stories, but my house just got really loud and I can't continue. I've tried to read a bunch of stories like numerous times now and it's just too loud in my house right now. So I'm gonna end this video here. So it's not gonna be too long of a video this time. Next video, I'm hoping I will be able to film at a quieter time in my house. There's just too much going on upstairs and my dog is freaking out. So I'm going to end the video here. I'm sorry that this is a shorter video and I will definitely read your guys' Instagram and emails in the next couple of videos. I'm just going to keep it at the Reddit stories for today. And I thank you so much for watching my video. If you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below for more content like this, and I will see you guys at the next video. Bye.